McCartney's family name was heavily involved in the colonial suppression of India, and the apple hasn't fallen from the tree in his case. Lennon's storyline about having "you could have saved me, Jimmy," what is being hidden by his monkey, clearly has a function in allowing domination by the people who wrote the script and lay in wait to pretend they discovered it. That's perfectly obvious and not very mysterious. What is made clear is their determination to keep it mysterious because they don't want anybody actually evaluating what happened. If you look at Fayum, you have a situation in Fayum where there was contested sovereignty between Croatia, Habsburg, and the Italians. Gabriel D'Annunzio was the lead player there. So it emerges that Luigi Freddi, his acolyte, introduced D.W. Griffith to Mussolini in the Fayum environment. So Hollywood studio systems began to get off the ground at the time of the great dictators in a counterfeiting then. And so what it's described as a totalitarian truth system in Western alteration of media, the media's purpose is this idea of a narrative being dominant, and it emerges from a counterfeiting then. This is clearly very relevant to what's not being told about what's going on. Now, I come to understand that there are super billionaires operating behind the scenes. Look at Putin's definition of the Kremlin, that it's a group of people who counsel each other, and he represents their counsel. He's not independent of them. This is like the room behind the revolving bookshelf in Hollywood. And the hot wiring system that went on in the Borgia style of Kennedy's assassination, which was the idea that we would let him pretend he was president for a while and then execute him in a nexus system between Reagan's film The Killers, which was made simultaneously, and the action in Dealey Plaza, which was then nexused again when they planted the script on me and took me to D.C. when Reagan claims he was shot, and he waves to me. And they give me a brochure. There's no such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes. And the Beatles intone that John Lennon's truth is that I did it to myself. So it's a Van Gogh disputed masterpiece, so to speak. And Ono is claiming it because she says I symbolize the survival of America after the atomic bombing. When I say it's a 50-50 relationship, Oswald went back and forth between Russia as a KGB CIA liaison, even though they both set him up and executed him. That's what he was doing. It was a non-aggression pact outgrowth of what Stalin and Wiesler got together and huddled about in Poland that went on behind the scenes between Andropov and Bush. Oswald was the namesake of Oswald Mosley. If you want to solve the Kennedy assassination, it's relatively easy. You can watch Michael Payne on YouTube. Michael Payne had possession of Oswald's rifle 7 days a week. So all you have to do is follow the trail of evidence to Michael Payne. The person who was the star witness for the Warren Commission had just been let out of an insane asylum for threatening to kill JFK. General Edwin Walker led the race uprising, protesting James Meredith being admitted to the University of Mississippi. Kennedy sent federal troops to escort James Meredith to his classes, and Walker threatened to kill him. So when Jackie Kennedy announced the soundbite, oh, it was some silly communist and not for a civil rights stance, she was expressing what the narrators wanted people to believe. He was killed over his civil rights stand, and that was something that even the NAACP didn't want to admit because he symbolized the weak white liberal aristocracy that they were being groomed to react against by this alliance between Bush and Putin that led to the Obama presidency, which is controlled by David Geffen and Nosferatu. Now, Penis, as in Gabriel, sings this song called The Musical Box, where he says, "The nurse will tell you lies about the kingdom beyond the skies." Well, if you want to know why Israel so hates Muslims, one of the reasons is that the Germans made a joke of the ramps to the gas chambers. They called it Himmelschweck when they tortured and gassed me, which the NAACP facilitated, which Obama facilitated, which the perverts in Seattle could not get enough of, which is one of the basic rubs of Yoko Ono's franchise, claiming that John Lennon was the master narrator. That's the Spirit Foundation cult bequeathment to her, a blank check, so to speak. The idea is that they claim that I did it to myself. So you have Toons Van Gogh emerging again. Well, they gassed me in a place called King's Estate, like King's Heavenly Estate. Himmelschweg was the ramp to Auschwitz. That's like Himmelschweg's the road to heaven, right? And so the Muslims believe in hereafter, a higher cause. So the draft board gets in the game and says, if you want to be recognized, like the Filipinos are very devout Roman Catholics, and they weren't allowed to bring their wives here after serving in our army, sworn under our flag in World War II. You should be willing to sacrifice. And they come up with people like Aaron Bushnell, and they say, see, look at how the Muslims regard Aaron Bushnell. They don't say this is psychotic. This is an attempt to use our faith in Allah to create an extermination camp. Aaron Bushnell was mocking everything. Sean Strub and Michael Foucault did the same thing with the AIDS virus. They self-immolated. They were burning Buddhas, so to speak. And Bobby Seale, always on Ronald Reagan's coattails as a celebrity of the 60s, was saying, let's have a barbecue. Okay, so you see where Cornel West and Benerbini bypassed my attempts to warn the Nosferatu who was getting revenge for Auschwitz. They called it building momentum because they were spreading what they called consciousness of the collective by spreading the disease, making it virtually mandatory to put yourself at risk. Diamond Douglas called it high-risk hazing. You could, if you wash, we will be offended. And they put it on hold for COVID, 6 feet apart or 6 feet under. But this is what the FBI allowed to have happen by failure to recognize that AIDS was a weapon of the criminally insane and trying to help people. Amanda Harcourt was going on about the whole is greater than the sum of its parts in 1984. So when you look at the actual script, you see it's a con from international cinema. In the background of Japanese films, German films, Italian, French, British films, American films from the war era. When the American cinema system got off the ground, when the defeated reasserted their power after the Civil War. At the time of Hubert Harrison, he was a soapbox orator in New York City, listed in one of the top 10 sightseeing attractions of the times. And he was the man who introduced Marcus Garvey to the Polite Society and wrote When Africa Awakes. At this time, the D.W. Griffith, who was been introduced to Mussolini, was strutting his stuff, inventing the first use of the burning cross for the KKK. These were the people who made Reagan's wartime films with all of its pro-Axis symbolism. So the defeated reasserted their power after the Civil War and then again after World War II with the Red Scare. It was the same little gang of honchos. And Bobby Seale exists in this celebrity cluster. So he can't break. Muhammad Ali couldn't break from Ronald Reagan. Nobody can break from Ronald Reagan. The Beatles are blood oath and death vow to Ronald Reagan. In turn, even though he rubbed it in our faces, is exploiting that sympathy. But as I say, Reagan's attorneys had me in D.C. for the show when he claimed he was shot. He waved to me, gave me a brochure that reads, "There's no such thing as objective reality, only what the jury believes." Ming Na Wen, of course, doesn't want that to get around because she poached the script on cue with the help of somebody living in my house from Fox Media. So when you look at the situation that accumulated around the master narrative control system, you have this group behind the revolving bookshelf in places like the Kremlin, the leapfrog oligarchs. When Biden said, "I'm introducing Putin," they say, "Oh, he meant Zelensky." Maybe he meant both of them, because the leapfrog of Nosferatu goes on behind the scenes. The nation state is like script. Oliver Stone and Kissinger meet with Putin to slap five at the leapfrog oligarch barbershop, because they have the nation states basically taking scripted lines like actors in a Hollywood movie. But who's doing the scripting is these honchos from behind the scenes. So one of the things that they're doing is exploiting the lack of materialism of people who believe deeply enough in ethical standing between themselves and what is expected of them to summon a willingness to go to our deaths as stoics, knights of resignation, rather than wake people up and have them recognize that the Axis has created a situation of powerful piracy to manipulate people, to refuse to give them information, to sell them narratives to explain what they can't seem to get into their editorials. And one of the reasons why they've stricken the record of the Texas school book, they claim that it's a sea in the Star of David, that Paul McCartney spiritually represents the victims. And if you don't go along with it, you should be pricked. The reason they keep it quiet is because if people were allowed to evaluate the script, they would see that Lenin pulled a Houdini. It was given names like Enru, Bly Cinders, Blaze from the Cinders, Phoenix, Lazarus, back from the dead, Casper, the Walrus. It was given all of these planning names in the voyage of Ouspensky fourth dimensional psychology that comes out in the background, as I said, of Japanese, Italian, German, American, French films. It's in Diva. It's in countless film noirs. It's in Birth of the Nation. The difference between the scurrilous demagoguery of the Birth of the Nation and the scurrilous demagoguery of the Texas School Book was that they used a white figure for the Texas School Book. Because as we know from archives we found in Tacoma, the Green Party is an arc. They said, we'll take the good kind of black people, the ones who are chivalrous and noble, and they kick off our grannies and so on with COVID. It's a nightmare of British intelligence. These people have basically decided that he who tells the story is in control. And anybody who believes otherwise believes in God, so they're ready to say goodbye to the world. Nosferatu, in turn, believe that there are winners and losers. Nosferatu validates and calls up and praises a Romanian right-wing, self-avowed Nazi crank. It's not because Israel has Nazi ideology, because they both believe that winners are strong, losers are weak and die. That's the structure of the system. It's not Jews versus Aryans. It's strong versus weak, losers die.